The last thing that I wanted to talk about is AI grading. So Maverick is programmatically listening. This month, it's listened to 474 calls in my follow-up boss. A call conversation is over 2 minutes, and it's listening to all of them. Now, what I decided to do was in the beginning of July, I noticed a problem. This number right here was 40%, okay? And that number meant that out of 10 conversations with new leads, 4 out of the 10, my agent said we should meet. So 10 conversations, 4 out of the 10 we should meet. And about 45%, 40 to 45% of the time, the lead said yes. So out of 10 conversations, we said, do you want to meet? And about 1.7 out of the 4, so just under half, but let's just do 2. Let's just call it 2. 2 out of the 4 said, sure, I'll meet. So then the beginning of July, I was like, guys, you are blowing it. Just tell them, don't ask them, tell them this is the largest purchase of your life. It deserves careful consideration and wise planning. Literally, this is what I told them to say. This is the largest purchase of your life. This is the largest sale of your life. It deserves careful consideration and wise planning. In light of that, we need to meet. I want to spend 45 minutes with you and go over the process in detail. You should not be guesstimating on these numbers. It's too important. Now, I like to do these appointments Wednesday afternoons or Saturday mornings, but I can be flexible. What works best for you? That's what I told them to say, right? So the beginning of July, they were like, fine, Barry, I'll do it. It jumped to 70%. And guess what stayed the same? The number of times they said yes. So the aggregate to my organization now, instead of asking 4 out of 10 conversations, now they're at 7 out of 10 conversations, right? So now instead of getting 2 appointments out of 10 conversations, now I'm getting 3.6 or 4. I've literally doubled the number of face-to-face appointments that my team is having as a result of that one metric, just one, right? The other thing that I want to say here, now, if I showed you this week, we've dropped back down to 50%. So just so you know, you don't say it once and they remember. Like they're intelligent, they're hardworking, and sometimes they're like toddlers. You got to remind them, right? They fall off the focus. Some other things that I noticed when I'm looking at specific timeframes are this: my sales meetings are freaking money now. I'm able to say, hey guys, I know by looking at your calls for this week, interest rates being too high is something that comes up a lot because it's bigger, right? Not this very second means maybe one person. See how it's smaller? The bigger ones, it's come up more than once, right? My credit score is not high enough, right? I don't feel like going to this. I don't feel like going to Newport News either, to be honest with you, but it's not really into buying another house. So you see all this, right? So I'm able to teach my team specific examples. I'm also able to say, hey, you guys aren't overcoming your objections very much, right? We need to work on that. The other thing, similar to what Daniel did, I look at the number of calls graded. I could just sort who has the best score, but this person only called one time. Like, I don't care about that. I want to know who's actually calling this week and what are their scores. And then I'm able to train effectively. Now, as I started to do that and look at the grades, I started to see some themes. The same agents were calling the same amount of times, same amount of conversations, same scores. So then I went to each one. I said, hey, I see you working. What a great thing to hear from your team leader. Yeah. I see you putting in the effort. I know that you don't have any deals on the board, but 3 weeks in a row, you're crushing it with calls. And I see you're consistently getting a 6 for a grade. Let me sit down with you. Let's talk through some of these things. And then what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you call the AI robot. I call it robot. I don't call it AI because I feel like AI is used so much. I want you to call the coach number. I want you to practice on the robot. And I'll sit here with you and we'll talk about it after, right? And then what we found is when we're hiring a new agent, We have them call the standard buyer and the standard seller 2 times a day for the first 2 weeks. I've been training agents for a long time. I have never moved the needle from a phone sales script perspective as fast as I do now. Mm-hmm. Nothing has ever allowed my team to perform well as a new agent to calling leads as having them practice. Surprise, surprise, role play really does work. But what we've discovered is the fact that they're calling AI a robot, even though they're afraid, they're doing it in the car, they're doing it at 11 o'clock at night, they're doing it where they feel safe because they're nervous. And so they go off and they go by themselves and they practice. They don't have to feel like they're looking stupid anymore. And so I found that they try harder. And then the last piece to this is when I sit with my agents and I point out these specific metrics and I say, here's a script you're using. Here's something that I think you should change, right? Really granular training as a result of this data. It works. And that agent then goes and they get somebody under contract. Well, guess what I do? I interview that agent. I've got so many stay-at-home moms on my team absolutely crushing it with their part-time gig, full-time mom, part-time agent. And they're like, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what you want me to do. And I look at the data and I'm like, do these 3 things. And it works. And then they get somebody under contract. And I could tell my team all day long, listen to me, you know, I'm a coach and da, da. But I have found the iterative impact of having somebody that doesn't fit the mold, like the new agent that shouldn't be crushing it and is, interviewing that agent. Hey, you just got 123 Smith Street under contract. Tell us the story. That's what I asked. Tell us the story. How'd you meet him? I said, oh, I called him. I used the script you told me to. Okay. All right. What'd they say? Why did they tell you they weren't ready yet? What was their objection? Well, they said that they were waiting for rates to change. What'd you say next? And they tell me. And then I say, okay, well, how did you close? Like, how did you meet them? They're not even approved yet. Oh, I used your buyer presentation script and they met with me and I freaked out because I didn't even know what to do. Right. And then we met. I had one agent. She was like, yeah, you know, I just really like comfort food. I couldn't believe she said that. I really like comfort food. So they said they weren't ready for a year. And I said, well, why don't we go over the process? Do you guys like Waffle House? And I said, excuse me, did you say you met them at a Waffle House? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what was their average sales price or what were they looked at? She was like, he was an officer in the Navy and they were looking at about a $500,000 to $600,000 home. And in our market, that's a lot. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I wouldn't have picked a Waffle House, but it worked. Right. And everybody on the team's like, oh my gosh. So what are the 4 things, Daniel? I feel like if everybody executes on the 4 things we talked about, they'll crush it. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's only going to help, you know, and it's only going to point out the areas that you need to improve in your business. You know, I didn't know how flawed my business was until I started using it, you know, and I started to see trends, greens and reds and all that stuff. So I think I would encourage people to give it some time because Maverick is not one of those tools that in 5 minutes you're going to be like, okay, I see a result from it. It's a business building tool. I mean, it's got some amazing things that it can do, like tricks, so to speak, but like use it as like a business building partner almost. And with that, you have to invest into it. You got to click around, you got to poke around, you got to see, what does this mean? What does this mean? And the more you do it, like I said, I've been using these reports for like 3 years. I cannot imagine running my business without it. Like I would just crawl in a corner and cry because I wouldn't know what's happening. So don't feel like you have to know it all today. I think just take little bits and say, what is one thing I can learn today and apply? And then the next day, what's one little thing I can learn and apply? So yeah, I'm excited to see how it affects so many people.